The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Jakob Freund, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Jacob, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm super happy to have you here. I've been looking forward to this conversation all summer, honest talking. So I'm really just happy that you're here with me today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Lasse. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Jacob, what I want to start asking you about or talk to you about is, how do we ensure that the AI we're doing is not just tech for the sake of tech, but tied to real business value? How do we do the measurable value when we're talking AI?
Yeah, I would say honestly, the question is absolutely justified. And looking at how much of a hype there's right out there about AI, it's even more important to get clarity on that. Now, for me, the point, honestly, is that at the end of the day, AI, it is simply another way to automate stuff. Like, it's all about automation. It's about machines doing things on behalf of people, if you will, that before that required people. So AI simply takes that ability that machines and computers provided to a higher level, to apply it to more areas, you could say, to more use cases. Things that could not be automated before can now be automated. However, it means that when it comes to value, you basically apply the same patterns that you always applied to automation. So not automation for the sake of automation, but for the sake of, for example, driving better customer experiences, because customers get their things faster, more conveniently, or to drive efficiency, because you don't need, for example, as much manual labor. So in that sense, I would actually say the answer here is relatively straightforward, because you simply apply the same mechanisms and patterns to measure value and to calculate the ROI, etc., to AI-powered automation that you always apply to automation. Now, in fairness, that is not always happening. So there's a lack of discipline sometimes that has been around in the past 10, 20 years already in IT anyway. So that has to be overcome. And that need is catalyzed now by AI in that sense. So it's even more important to really get your ducks in a row. But it's not an actually different approach.
But I think what the reason I'm also asking is because I've seen the way you've built this ad hoc, what do you call that symbol? The tilde, we call it in Danish. The
BPMN sub-process, yes. The ad hoc sub-process.
So the ad hoc thing, right? And my point is that you have something like that, it's really difficult to measure just what it's going to do, because it's actually able to attack the process from any point, right? It's like it owns a domain of tools instead of owning a process end-to-end trigger to output, right? And if you have trigger to output, it's quite easy to say, okay, let's measure this variable here and here, right? And then there you go, there's your dashboard. But what do you do when you don't know what people are going to ask it for, when it just has access to a lot of tools? Does it make sense what I'm asking you?
Yeah, I think it doesn't make sense, because you're now coming to the house, so to speak, right? So it's clear that we need to tie the value that we expect from AI to be generated to business outcomes, and it's all part of like one framework, so to speak, in order to run the business. However, now the question is, okay, when we break this down and make it concrete on the level of business process automation, how does an AI-driven automation differ from a what we call deterministic process diagram driven automation? And maybe just to give the context here, you mentioned that now in our product, which is all about process automation, and for the sake of that, orchestrating all the endpoints that play a role in a business process. And we have introduced this concept of the ad hoc sub-process, which is a symbol in the BPMN standard, the business process modeling standard. And the idea being that, okay, outside of the ad hoc sub-process, everything is driven by a predefined workflow diagram, like, flowchart notation, if-then branches, etc. But inside the ad hoc sub-process, like a box, basically, right? There you actually have an agent operating, which means that the AI decides which steps need to happen in which order. Those are the tasks or tools within the ad hoc sub-process. And now the question is, okay, if we do it that way, then of course certain ways to measure don't apply anymore, because you don't have this predefined workflow model that you can use as a skeleton to measure what's happening. Now, the good news is that still things like, for example, cycle time apply. So how long does it take for the agent, aka sub-process, to complete the case that they're handling? So in that sense, one of the most important KPI, which is speed of execution, is still very much available. What you can also do is you can look at the different things that the agent is doing and how long those things again take. So in that sense, you have the full visibility into speed of execution. You can tie that to outcomes still. So when it comes to, for example, let's say calculating interest rates or providing a loan offer or things like that, you can still measure, for example, how well that offer is being received, if it's rejected, if it goes through right away. So in that sense, you're actually still able to bring it all together, despite the fact that you have an agent operating it.
But the difficult thing here is, right, that I think, because I really get what you're saying, but that's what I usually call AI agents built into some kind of workflow, right? So you still have the process around it, the determined process around this ad hoc agent space, right, where it can do anything. So it means there is a trigger still, and there's an output. There's something we expect to happen. But, if we're talking about these full non-deterministic agents that just, I own accounts payable, and I can do anything. That is the goal. That is what someone like OpenAI is hunting for, right? And all that, you can do anything. Just tell me what to do, I'll do it for you, right? How do you measure the value of something where you it's like an employee, you say you have to do this, but then the employee does something else, but what he did was also valuable, but you didn't expect it, right? And how do you give a bonus for that? Do you get my point? There's something here that seems to me to, at least in the dream of the non-deterministic AI agent, to be decoupled from the way we usually think automation.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I would do one thought exercise with you, which I find interesting, which is, what if we actually bring the concept of process and process execution deterministically, if you think traditionally, and case execution dynamically by people or by IT systems, so agents. What if we bring these on the same level? What I mean here is, let's look at it that way. Nowadays, people are talking about agents, and they often think of relatively limited local task automation agents, right? This is what, spreading up right now like crazy. Everyone's cobbling together some piece of agent that is doing some little stuff, some productivity helpers, you could say.
Yeah, also all these, we've had agents for 10 years, no? Yeah, but that's a different kind of agent, isn't it?
For sure. Now, our customers, which are usually bigger enterprises that run mission-critical core processes on Camunda, like, to your point, right, accounts payable or bank account opening, KYC, customer onboarding, that sort of thing. They are incredibly uncomfortable seeing those local, wildly created task agents spreading up all over the organization. There's no way that the CISO would approve like any of that for actual mission critical process execution. At the same time, they do understand the incredible power of agentic, like the idea of, okay, we give actually an AI system a mission, if you will, not even just a task, but a mission like open this bank account for this customer and let them run with it. Now we're talking end-to-end, basically. So end-to-end process orchestration, actually. Mm-hmm. So what we're thinking here on Camunda is that it's actually converging. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you call this an end-to-end process orchestration, or if you call it an enterprise-grade agent that is handling the case of bank account opening. So in that sense, what our customers are doing with this seamless blend of deterministic and dynamic orchestration, they're basically creating enterprise-grade agents. That's just a different way to talk about it.
Yeah, so it's like, but as I said, it's owning this whole process more than it's just a flow or a deterministic process, right? So it's owning the flow, and that's also what I was trying to get at, because I get the whole value point of it. I don't doubt there's a value there, right? But it's just when I can also ask it, you can both ask it to create this bank account for me and for my customer, right? But I can also ask it how many customers did you open bank accounts for yesterday? And it will be able to answer that as well, because the trigger is coming from everywhere, right? It's like it's like the process suddenly becomes a planet, and every trigger is an asteroid coming from any angle. You get that picture, right?
Yeah, I get it. It's about resiliency too, right? So in that sense, no, of course. So I love this analogy, actually. It's like, if we think about it that way, you can say, yes, we have the bank account opening agent, right? And this is not just like, some simple task agent thing. This is like it's a big thing, basically, right? It's mission critical, it's core business, it's complex. Bank account opening is not simple when you consider all the rules and regulations. So this is not like, these tiny little agents that are floating around. This is it's an enterprise agent.
And it's not like, what GPT-3, what do you think you should do here? Please do what we want you to do. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not like, download this document and convert it into something that I can read out loud and then post it on Slack or whatever, right? Like, it's not that sort of agent. No. So in that sense, this is really, this is serious stuff. And, so if you have, your enterprise grade agent in place, it will be able to handle all those bank account openings. But to your point, Lasse, it has a sense of ownership. So in that sense, you can ask it, for example, hey, how many bank accounts did you open yesterday? Did everything go well? Like, did you observe any, for example, delays, right? Because, I don't know, in a certain geography, because of new rules and regulations, for example, suddenly, the agent has, more often than not, to pull in humans in order to, have a double check. And this delayed then the customer bank account, opening, which then, again, impacts customer experience. So there's suddenly a higher level of ability to not just have an agent execute the process, but own the process and think about potential improvements even. So I love this ownership analogy that you're bringing up here, and this is exactly where we're seeing the true power of pairing large language model, etc., and based agent execution with end-to-end process orchestration that we have been doing for years here at Camunda, because we had all of the things built in already. We have this foundation, so to speak, to answer all those questions with regards to process improvements, bottlenecks, etc. Now we're handling basically these powerful instruments again to the AI, to the agent. So in that sense, bringing these two together is incredibly powerful on the enterprise level.
Yeah, and everything in the end, I know also if you move up a fractal, you'll always end up at some kind of business process orchestration, right? So,
Sure.
So I'm not, but that's not, I don't think that's the dream of OpenAI in the end. But I think, for the foreseeable 20, 30, 100 years, I think there will be a room for deterministic processes around it, maybe forever, right? But it's also, now the value is tremendous here, right? Because then you can have something that has, clear defined access to also other workflows defined in, for instance, Camunda, so it can access those and trigger those, so it becomes the universal trigger thing, right? It owns the process, as we just talked about. But then the uncomfortable question is, so what do you do about unlimited capabilities, ownership, and does that also mean unlimited testing phase, Jacob?
Yeah, I think what you're basically getting at is, of course, the risks that come with that, right? Like great power, great responsibilities.
Yes,
in that sense. Yeah, of course, absolutely. You
did the Spider-Man one. You did it.
So in that sense, and of course, there's this discomfort, right? It's basically it's almost like autonomous driving, right? That's a big thing as well. Like, right, as the person in the car, I need to have full trust that the car will do the right things if I take my hands off the wheel, and this is a life and death kind of thing. And hence there's these different levels of autonomous driving, etc. So in that sense, I do see a certain analogy here that we're in the early days still of AI, and especially of agentic AI. I recently attended a meeting with executives from one of the biggest banks in the US. It was for the whole day. The talk was about AI and agentic. but every second sentence was, we are a regulated bank. Like that was like, that's the absolute omnipresent situation.
Disclaimer,
I think every other
disclaimer.
Yeah, exactly. We're a regulated bank. And the other second sentence was, we are still early stage. Like, this is so that's a reality right now. So in that sense, similar to autonomous driving again. So, and that's where, I think two things will kick in. One, over time, trust will build because, gradually, agents will receive more and more autonomy, and then, there will be pioneers, so to speak, in the industry, just like in this crossing the chasm curve, right? The early adopters, and then later on the early majority. So they will demonstrate to others that it is actually safe to do. A bit like, I don't know, I don't want to bring up Tesla now because that might like a difficult example. But I mean, of course, when we see people around in autonomously driving cars, after a while, we become more comfortable doing it ourselves, like eventually, not yet. And then to your point, in itself, okay, what are the guardrails, right? What are the mechanisms to prevent, for example, again, the car from going rogue or doing the wrong things, or to prevent the enterprise-grade agents to doing the wrong things in bank account opening, for example, to comply with regulations around fin crime, money laundering, etc. So, and here, you mentioned deterministic execution, right? Like rule-based execution, so to speak, is probably going to stay around forever, and I completely agree with that. I completely agree. Because at the end of the day, again, we're emulating human activities here with AI. And forever, humans had to observe rules, policies, guardrails.
I just knew a German would say that on the podcast.
yeah, of course. So, in fairness, maybe in Germany there's a few more than in other countries to observe. Fair enough.
No, but I love that. I remember when I'm driving in Germany, there's like people are like, there's no rules here. Okay, we drive 500 miles an hour on the highway.
That's the biggest irony of all.
But then you drive off and there's like a 30 kilometers limit and there's no cars there. But everyone drives 30 because now there's a rule, right? So it's like,
of course. Like, no, but it's ridiculous actually. It's a country that is like, so obsessed with rules and regulations. Then when it comes to driving on the Autobahn, like for whatever reason they have this free spirit. I can't like. I'm German.
I actually love that. I think it's brilliant. But because I have a tendency to love Germany. I don't know. I also because I've lived there and I don't know. I don't know what it is. And my wife as well. We're like, why do we love Germany? We don't really know. But the point is that. That's okay. But you're actually right? That we tend to say that the humans are free, right? There's some weird liberal, heritage here, inheritance there going on in the idea about humans being completely free all the time. But in reality, we're always, when you're brought up, you're shamed to behave in the right way, right? When you come into a company, you're not just you graduated in strategy. Please change our strategy, right? No, that's not how it works, right? So you have to. There's this. Humans are also scaffolded, as we would call it in technology, right? To fit and do a certain thing and be actually very, very concrete. And I think that's what we need to think about when we want to talk about anthropomorphizing AI agents, right? That they are also having to be controlled that way. And I actually wanted to ask you a short question here, because I just thought about that. Do you think that your ad hoc box will become bigger or smaller over the next 10 years? Will people have very small agents? This agent can do 1, 2, 3 things, or will they just have these massive? This agent can do 5,000 things. What do you actually think?
Okay, so first of all, I would say that the agents will be scoped to the use case, so to speak, like to the case. So there will be like there might be a bank account opening agent. There might be a credit card issue agent or something like that. But there wouldn't be like, this one bank agent that does everything the bank does. I mean, of course, like you could slice and dice it that way. When then you have like sort of a work dispatcher, like, incoming customer inquiries handled by an agent, which would then route them to the right, like, case handler.
I don't think you're ambitious enough, Jacob, to make the Deutsche Bank agent now, just the big one, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, hey, I'm not in marketing, right? But of course, yeah, sure. Deutsche Bank, yeah, okay, that's a whole podcast episode in itself, I guess. But no, I think it's going to really boil down. Let's put it that way. I think at the end of the day, it is all agents, and then the question is just, okay, within those agents, how much is deterministic, how much is a dynamic execution, or in BPMN speak, how much is deterministic, aka sequence flows, right? Boxes and arrows that go from one box to the other. And how much is dynamic, aka the ad hoc sub-process where you just like drop in the different tools or tasks, rectangles, boxes, and let the AI decide what to do next. Within the ad hoc sub-process, you can of course also have deterministic execution elements included. So you can always say that, for example, I don't know, something very super simple now, but yes, you might send the customer an email to ask for more documentation. Well, if you do that, then you must also wait for a response and write and handle that response. So visually now, it means you have a box that says ask for documentation, then you have an arrow coming out of that box, and then you have in BPMN now a little envelope symbol that says waiting for the reply. So if you do this, then you must do that. So you're constraining the agent. Maybe this one is too obvious, but I wanted to make it simple. So it means that at the end of the day, it's all blending. It's all blending deterministic and dynamic orchestration. And honestly, it's all agentic orchestration, as we say at Camunda. So in that sense, it all comes together as an agent. So it is always going to be like an agent, entirely end to end. How much of that is then, does it start with deterministic or dynamic? How much is deterministic versus dynamic? That remains to be seen based on the respective use case. What I can say from our customers that are doing this right now, the deciding criteria usually, do I want flexibility, ability to handle the unforeseen, then I go for dynamic, or do I want to have predictability, consistency in execution, and also efficiency? Because having an LLM decide what to do next costs more resource power. You need more CPU, so to speak. And when you do this at scale, so when you think of, for example, processing orders as an e-commerce shop like Zalando, right? Millions of orders, or trading, like payments, etc. That's the sort of stuff that people do with Camunda. Then, of course, every transaction matters a lot with regards to how much it costs. So you want to keep the cost minimal. And let's say dump rule-based execution is just much, much cheaper than smart AI-based execution.
So you think small?
No. It depends on the situation, right? But yes, of course. I will always have as much AI as necessary, but probably as little as possible because it's more expensive.
Exactly. So it's actually like with context, give it as much context as it needs, but keep it as little as possible so it's focused. So it's the same principle, right? So don't overdo the capabilities if you don't need the capabilities, right? But that also requires a lot of analyst work, right? I think that's one of the things that's gonna probably grow. I think actually I spoke about we talked about risk just a second ago, right? And I had Robert Fuchs on, and you also spoke about autonomous driving. And Robert Fuchs is he was on the podcast some episodes back, and he is head of R&D for developing steering mechanisms for Toyota at JTEC in Japan. And he said that he introduced me to the concept of the human crumple zone, which means that whenever you have something that's extremely complex, you end up having humans as instead of in a car when it crashes, there's a crumple zone to protect the human. But suddenly now in complex systems, humans become the crumple zone to be squished to protect the complexity of the system. So that brings me to how to build these human in the loop thing.
Really hard.
But it is what we do when we do aviation, for instance, and there's something going wrong in the system, and the pilot cannot, has no clue what's going on, but he's blamed. And the same with nuclear power plants, it happens there as well. There's some studies on that. And when we're building these things, right? If you build full agentic systems, and you say to a controller, just control, here's the locks. Have fun, Is that fair, or do we need to consider human in the loop in a different way? And I'm actually interested to hear how are you actually doing that with some of the big clients that you're having, also the big banks and all that. Are they just saying let the agent handle as much as possible, or do they add the human in the loop all the time to be sure? Is it risk averse human in the loop thing, or is it just human controlling in the end?
I get it. Yeah, because there are these two ways to handle risks or unwanted things that happen. So either you try to prevent them, right? So they cannot even happen. Or you deal with them once they have happened. For example, even at the end of the month, you can say how many times did we do this thing that we shouldn't have done. And is that if it's not a huge problem, then you can still handle it.
Yeah, then you make the human to be something like, Jacob, why didn't you catch this? Oh,
yeah. Well, then of course, then you can get into the blame game. But I'm just sort of conceptually, there's these two approaches. And so what I can say is that human in the loop is a huge thing. It's incredibly important, especially right now that we're still in the early days of agentic. Again, it's like with autonomous driving, right? Like right now, level 1 or whatever it is, yes, human is very much in the loop still. So, and it's very, very similar, I would say, to enterprise-grade agentic AI in our customer base, like, banks, etc., insurances, telco, media. So it means that usually humans are often pulled in to approve, sanity check, 4 eyes principle, kind of review of what the agent is about to do. So
it's about to do.
Yes, exactly. There's a concept of confidence also in agentic, which means that if an agent has low confidence that the decision they make is sound, so there's this sanity, like a built-in sanity check, then you can deal with it. In Camunda, we have this BPMN symbol, like the error event, the little flash, the little lightning that we attach to, for example, an ad hoc sub process, and it can react to, like either as an aborter or as an escalation, which doesn't necessarily abort, but it can react to the agent flagging that their confidence that they're making the right call is, like, let's say below 50%, for example. Right, and then we can, so when you design the process now again, you can say, for this kind of process, like let's take again the bank account opening, if the confidence the agent has in executing the right calls on money laundry checks is below 50% or below 80 or below 90%, we cannot accept that. So then we have to pull in the human in the loop to review this case manually. So it can be like, it's like a dial that you can dial up and down with regards to speed, efficient execution versus safe execution.
Yeah, because even though that the AI will be the owner, it will never be the owner of the AI, right? You get my point. There will always be some human owning the output and some that will have the responsibility for whatever it does, even though it's fully autonomous, right?
Yeah.
So that's the irony.
It's very unlikely that an LLM will ever be sent to jail. So, so in that sense, if not them, who else? Because someone has to go.
But how do you, by the way, do that, right? How do you determine if it's 50%, 80% if it's an LLM? Is it an LLM saying how sure it is of its own answer? Because, I've met LLMs that are quite sure of themselves.
Hallucinating. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the right answer, right? How do you deal with that? I think that's, I'm actually puzzled about that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like in a way, it's a recursive problem, right? So in that sense, can you trust the AI or can you trust the LLM to sanity check itself sufficiently, right? So yeah, that's a fair element here. And of course, at the end of the day, it also depends on the exact setup. So which model do you use? Which generation of that model? How do you potentially, for example, pair different models to check each other, right?
Yeah,
like a FOI principle.
And that's whenever people asking me, people from machine learning, they're like, I'm like, yeah, that's what we do. We ask agents to check agents. I know it sounds like a cheap workaround, but it's
honestly, it's exactly a FOI principle. That's what you've been doing manual process execution for ages, right? Like person A checks person B.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing, right? Yeah, and reducing hallucination.
Exactly. So in that sense, so there are different ways to instill or to determine that confidence level. I wouldn't claim that they're all necessarily reliable. So again, in itself, right, there's a certain maturity curve, and I believe they will become more reliable over time. But I think it's actually a very important aspect. Again, if you compare that with humans, we rely on people being able and honest to judge their own ability to do their job. That'd be the pilot in the plane, right? And the bus driver. Like there's the tremendous amount of trust that you put into that person and that moment, and you trust their ability to judge if they're able to do the job. So something similar is required for AI as well.
Yeah, and then we'll have to over time see, is that going to be big or small, right? Like we just talked about before. Is that going to be everything or very, very limited things that we allow them to do just to help us process some unstructured data, unstructured decisions or something like that, right? So we'll have to see how it evolves as well, right? And that's always funny because I think every company is also coming to you and say, what are everyone else doing? How are they doing it at scale? And you're like, hey guys, this has been up for 3 years, right?
a bit like that. I mean, like as I said earlier, right? We have this crossing the chasm phenomenon where there are early adopters, there are pioneers in the industry. So we're working with some big banks that are actually, I would say, impressively bold, and really, in that sense, forging ahead. And of course, they, here or there, will get a bloody nose because, they've taken a certain pioneering risk. But bottom line, I'm pretty convinced that they're actually going to come out of this with a first mover advantage, and then there will be the laggards, right, that have to catch up. So in that sense, I think we're going to have our conference in New York soon, Camunda Con in October, and there we're going to, I think, highlight at least a half dozen to a dozen very, very interesting cases of successful agentic orchestration. And so there is something to be at enterprise scale. So there's something to be learned from saying. I think we are about to see this dam breaking right now, where it's then becoming the spiral of adoption. I also
think that we're on the cusp of at least companies starting to demand. I usually say to start to demand KPIs from this, right? Say that we need to have something that we can measure what it's actually doing instead of just doing things for fun. And I think that's maybe also what you're seeing, that people are actually starting to attach it to real processes and see what's the outcome that we're getting from this, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. That's the point now, right? The bank account opening process has certain KPI alongside customer experience, efficiency, etc. I mean, as a shareholder of that bank, so to speak, I don't care if it's executed by humans or traditional technology or AI. I just look at the same KPI, look at the same metrics, right? And AI has to live up to that, and usually does, of course.
So, but talking about first movers and laggards, right? You've shown great. What I've been impressed about when I'm looking at Camunda, and also why I think it's so cool to have you here today, is that you've been growing a lot over the last couple of years. And when I realized that, I was like, what? How are they doing that? Because the automation market is so crowded. There's so many orchestrators out there. There's so many people trying to do what you're doing and saying they're doing. Everyone's sort of seen that route, right? But you're growing aggressively and with great success. I also think, I don't know if that's true, but I've heard you had a lot of VC capital as well that's just lying around because you're operating in the black. But I don't know if that's true, Jacob, but that sounds also quite impressive in that growth spurt, right? So how are you actually ensuring now that you'll become a first mover or not become a laggard, or how are you building the future here in automation? What are you seeing in the future? We already spoke about all the AI agents and obviously that, but what is your winning formula in 2 years' time at Camunda?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack here, I would say. And first of all, yeah, thank you for the appreciation. Of course, we are proud, trying to stay humble too. So in that sense, but also want to answer a question, of course. So, where to begin? Let's put it that way. We started about 10 years ago. To your point, very crowded, saturated, almost stale market. It was called BPMN, Business Process Management. And that category grew by 4% or so every year. So it was anything but a hype category. It was not like RPA, for example, right? So definitely not a hype market that we entered there. We basically built a better mousetrap, like a product that was more developer-friendly, more lightweight, and that embraced this BPMN standard as a common language for business and IT, which others didn't effectively. Then we also reinvented how workflow execution can happen technically, so not based on relational databases like everyone else does, but based on event streaming, which then leads to a more cloud-native architecture that allows reliable execution of critical high-scale process use cases. I mentioned payments, for example, right? Just think about millions of people paying every day. And those payments must be processed reliably. So that's the kind of stuff that you can do only with Camunda, and that's why in a category that grew 5%, we grew like crazy, basically. So that's the story, that's the history how we got here. And now, looking forward or looking ahead, I think we're simply a bit lucky as a vendor that we have created this foundation for automation reliably at scale that is now needed to adopt again AI and agentic AI in particular. So you have to combine these two things in order to really benefit from AI as an enterprise, not just as an individual employee, so to speak, within the enterprise, but as a company, as an organization. And we now spoke already about the innovation that we have driven here in the past 6 months, mostly this blend of deterministic traditional workflow execution and dynamic AI-driven workflow execution, like as far as I know, no one else has that. So this ability to do this with one model, like one BPMN model, and one engine, not two engines. It's like one engine. And now to your point, Lasse, of course, many other vendors are racing for this emerging category now.
Yeah. And
they make similar statements on the website, right? They say, yes, we can orchestrate end to end and all of that. Sure, talk is cheap, right? So everybody can just say anything. No one can actually, drag anyone in front of a court to justify it. So in that sense, sure, you can say anything on a website. The good thing for us is that this kind of technology is usually evaluated by tech-savvy people in the organization. So, you don't introduce a new bank account opening technology because, one person was awed by a roadshow, in Las Vegas or whatever.
No, that's right.
So, that's not how it works here. That's how it works in RPA. That's both different there because it's more local solutions, but this one is enterprise stuff. So you have usually tech savvy people that really kick the tires, really evaluate this, run a proof of concept, do load tests, all of that before they actually green light and put this into production. And this is where we win every single time. So in that sense, on the marketing side, it's a bit annoying sometimes to cut through the noise and help people understand why they should look at Camunda. If they're pestered now with all these shining marketing stories.
That's sort of that's sort of my feeling, right? There are so many things out there. So how can these people grow at this rate? What's going on, right? Because everyone else is saying the same things, right? It's really difficult.
But that's the story here. So we're growing so fast and so successfully because as soon as you take a second look, a closer look, you realize, okay, they say this, the others say this, but they can't deliver. Camunda can deliver.
Okay,
and then,
but just to cut a little bit through your marketing crap here as well, right? So, so how do
we can do a POC if you like, but not an audio.
No, please don't. But maybe, I don't know. But point is, back in 2022, when ChatGPT came out, you must have been surprised as well. So you make it sound like, oh, well, we built this jigsaw puzzle and AI was just the last piece we missed in the middle and it was perfect and it's just a natural fit, It's like if that's true, you're the only one I've ever heard speak like that about it. So, but what did it cost for you to actually do this? What were some of the uncomfortable question? What were some of the things that you had to postpone doing that you wanted to do in Camunda to do this instead? What were some of the things that you decided not to do that maybe would have worked before? How did this change Camunda, right? I don't believe it fit perfectly. Maybe it ended up doing that and you found a way, this is a great thing for us. But it could be. Do you get my point?
I would say, okay, two few things here. So, first of all, believe it or not, right? But I would claim that we were and this is not on me personally, by the way. This is a bit of luck, and you always need a bit of luck as an entrepreneur, and it's great people. And what I mean here is this. I'm going to tell you the story. It was about a year ago. Yes, I think it was about a year ago. A little more than a year ago, we noticed that analysts like Gartner were proclaiming a new category called BOAT, Business Orchestration Automation Tech. And there they talked about hey, everything in automation is coming together, BPM and RPA and iPaaS and whatnot, it's all coming together. Because companies want this one Uber automation platform, so to speak, which sounds now a bit more negative than I mean it actually. So because there's definitely a rationale in there. If you create this in a composable way, then it's actually super helpful. So we saw that, and we were thinking, yes, this makes sense. And RPA, for example, is commodity now. So it's not hard to implement an RPA technology. So we just did that. About a year ago, we introduced RPA natively into Camunda in a composable fashion. So you can use it, but you don't have to use it. You can combine Camunda with whatever RPA product you already have. Fine. That was not yet super AI heavy, in fairness. Of course, AI was around already, but it was not yet agentic as a term was not yet that much around. And then over the course of summer last year, we noticed the agentic thing basically happening, and we looked at it. And we were like, okay, this is interesting. So far, AI was mostly about generative AI, so content, which is nice. You can orchestrate that as part of a deterministic workflow, right? And we did that, and we had the OpenAI connector and all of that. So customers were using it, but to us, AI was just another endpoint, so to speak. Now, however, the question became, okay, how can AI not just be an endpoint in an end-to-end process, but how can it actually be driving the process itself? That's the question that we were asking ourselves. And like conceptually, but then also specifically with regards to Camunda and in our case, always the BPMN standard, because that's like the language that we consider very powerful. So we asked ourselves, for example, does this need to happen outside of the BPMN language, like, and outside of our engine? Or is there a way to actually like intertwine this? And then it was not me, and I'm not exactly sure who it was, like individually, it doesn't matter. Usually it's like it's a team effort anyway. So it was a joint idea, which looked at this ad hoc sub-process in BPMN. Mm-hmm. And the thing is this ad hoc sub-process has been around like since BPMN was invented, like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Yep. But the idea was, this is where magic happens because you now need a human, a knowledge worker that handles this case. And you give that person autonomy to handle that case. That's what it was invented for originally. And so in that sense, there was like, it was this human analogy that then suddenly, like, jumped on us and was like, oh, wait a minute, that's what AI is for. So this is exactly, it's a jigsaw puzzle piece where it happens to fit in nicely.
It was actually waiting for you in the BPMN notation.
Yeah, exactly. It was sitting there all along. And then we POC'd that, we built a prototype, we showcased that in New York last year, about a year ago. And I remember showing that to some analysts, I'm not going to say who, and they looked at that and said, okay, wow, no one else has that, or is even working on anything like that. This is like really promising. It was super early stage, like a year ago. And then, like, the team worked super hard. And not to your point, Lasse, yes, we did deprioritize other things for that. Like, for example, we don't need to build the best possible RPA product out there. Like, there will be RPA use cases where the, other vendors will always, like, be superior. That's fine.
And you're agnostic anyway, right? For what you use.
We're agnostic, and we have, like, for the simple use cases, you just use what we have right away. For the more advanced ones, if you really want to, you can have, like, the dedicated RPA product. Don't need Camunda for it. So we focus still on the core, which is orchestration. It's just not deterministic orchestration only anymore. It's also dynamic orchestration, but that's who we are. So in that sense, it was a mix of being lucky, a mix of you could say collective genius at work, and focus.
So what you're saying is 1.5 years ago you were actually dreaming about having a perfect RPA tool, and then you were like, nah, let me just have a mediocre one and a good AI agent instead. That's what happened.
Yeah, we honestly never dreamt of having the perfect RPA tool because RPA, like, I don't want to be dismissive. It's okay. That's a job, right? So it's fine, but it's not so exciting.
I also want to, because I asked this about, Emma Unlimited, who also built AI agents. So I spoke a lot with him about this whole thing about building the AI agents outside of core platforms in tools like yours, which is, an engine to do workflows. And what I discussed with him was this notion that I've had for a long time that then in order to have really good AI agents, you need to have low ambiguity, right? And you need to have systems that connect very well together. You have systems that sort of, you have one truth, you have one table for currency, or you have one table you have good master data, you have this low ambiguity. And it made me ask him and also other people on the show about where they see that in the future, because I see the return of the monolith a little bit. So to some extent, Camunda has grown on the whole IT architecture of the world being composable, right? And that's where you sit in the middle of them. But what if the AI future will be the return of the monolith, and that will be a complete change to that, right? So someone like SAP just running the whole process, owning the process end to end, and then just building AI agents into this low ambiguity setup, right? But it is also a return of what everything we hated about it, right? But you get my point, right? AI agents, they navigate in a digital world, and if that digital world is not connected and low ambiguity, they can't navigate. So how you're still just an attachment, right, to all of these systems that companies have.
Yeah, so I would say, there's different ways to frame this, right? Let it be attachment or let it be, again, orchestrator. But a few things here, I would say. One, first of all, the whole idea of, like, one vendor, one product to run the business, so to speak. And of course, yes, SAP is one of those examples, right? Like, that set out with that idea in the 90s. But to my knowledge, there's very little evidence that they ever succeeded in that, like entirely, at any point in time. So at least in my career, I've never met a company that has run SAP and SAP only. I have met many companies that had SAP as a very central element in their organization. For example, SMB manufacturers in Germany, like, many of them. And then I think at some point, we had almost like a little mantra or motto. At the end, the process always calls SAP. Like, when they had a process in Camunda, that at some point, now put the stuff into SAP. So in that sense, and the omnipresence was there. But at the same time, again, I never had a case where someone said to me, everything we do in this organization is on SAP and we don't have any other application like in our organization. There was always something somewhere. And to me, this is sufficient proof and evidence that from the nature of the beast, so to speak, there will never be this one ring to rule them all. Like, I find this incredibly unlikely. Some companies might go that way, and then they have this huge disadvantage over their competitors. So there will always be this setup of applications that have to be integrated or better orchestrated. And in that sense, the question now is simply, okay, how do organizations architect or design their architecture? So, for example, one of the biggest banks in London, I visited the CIO recently, and she told me, we're introducing, I think I can say that here, Salesforce. Yes, it's a good thing for us. It's a CRM system. But while we're replacing our, homegrown legacy application, core banking system with it, but while we're doing that, we're also systematically externalizing the end-to-end process orchestration from Salesforce into a dedicated orchestration layer, which in our case was Camunda, of course, because that's why we're talking. But could have been, of course, theoretically also another system.
It could have been MuleSoft that's connected to Salesforce, right? Isn't it?
Though MuleSoft, but here's the point. MuleSoft is part of Salesforce, so why not in MuleSoft? Well, because MuleSoft is not actually a process orchestrator. It's not. Like, it's still focused on integration. And now I could do this whole competitive positioning, but
let's not do that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's an interesting point, right? Yeah, they had Salesforce, they had MuleSoft, and they paid extra for Camunda to have that in quite a I would say fair money, but substantial money, and to have this dedicated externalized orchestration layer. And that pattern, I believe, has a lot of justification and is adopted broadly.
But also, I get your point, because there's no company can losslessly say this is all that we do here, right? But the whole world has just been composable in the way that there's been so many. I just see a movement towards a little bit more of that. But obviously, that will have to sort of battle all the time with this cross-company architecture that the whole world is also moving to, where we are not just an enterprise doing, back digital 1.0 maybe was, you have your own core, but now your core is always connected to everything: customers, vendors, affiliates, public authorities, all the things they're doing. We're constantly connected to that all the time, and that's where the orchestration of other processes come in. But there will maybe be a more strict, world at some point, because AI agents, if you want to have AI agents, you have to have that. And I see that. I've been speaking about that as also a challenge to someone like Microsoft, right? Saying that they only do platforms. They don't want to own the process, right? So I think they will be challenged by that, because the world will be looking at, but can you then run my process if you don't understand my process, right?
Yeah, of course, absolutely, exactly. And it's like, the thing is, the way I think about the orchestration layer as a dedicated element in an architecture is, to me, it is the right middle ground between the idea of a complete monolith that wants everything, which I find unrealistic and also not desirable in many ways, and the other extreme, which we haven't tackled on, where we also have some advocates for in the industry, which is the complete autonomy of agents, and they're just choreographed instead of orchestrated, right? So they talk to one another in order to collaborate, instead of being told, oh, now this is necessary. Yeah. And this other extreme, just to mention that also, we have seen in the past with microservices as well. There was this idea like 10, 15 years ago, everything's a microservice, and the microservices are just collaborating with one another, so they are choreographed. And we don't want this centralized orchestration thing, because, there was almost an ideology around it. That didn't make it really. Like, there's very, very few examples nowadays where this has actually been implemented at scale successfully, and etc. So, you always need to find the right balance between, decentralized, flexible setups, and at the same time also centralized and you could say regulated or deterministic setups. And to me, the orchestration layer as a dedicated element in the architecture is a very good middle ground between those two desires.
Because there's this you're right. There's these two different megatrends, basically, major powers, right? The chaos and control.
So to speak, exactly. The anarchists and the dictators,
Titans and Zeus, right? Exactly. So this whole agent to agent, but my point is just that the agent to agent will also only work if these agents. I started thinking about it because when I walk around my office here. There's some rooms and we have desks and I can navigate it. Okay, maybe people put something there I didn't know, but it's still on a desk. But if your enterprise architecture is sort of made up like a Picasso painting and you put an agent there, I'm like, I don't think it will work out well. That was just my point, right? That you need to have some kind of control over your environment as well,
exactly,
to make sure it works.
Exactly.
But then obviously just granulate that into different multiple agents over time, and also have something to orchestrate that in the middle when you get to things that's outside of your control, right?
Exactly. And that's just to circle back to that now. This point now, this orchestrating all of that, right? I just call the orchestration layer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's exactly where it all comes together, and where it sometimes can be a bit confusing in the head, of course. But the enterprise grade agents, those are those orchestrators. They orchestrate other agents, for example.
Yeah.
So in that sense, this is how then clicks together basically. This next level of agentic to me is enterprise grade agents that are effectively the orchestration layer for specific use cases.
And then we end up, then the humans are an agent that are orchestrating the agents that are then being orchestrated. And then the human is also his boss is also an agent. And then now it's getting weird, right? Now it's getting inception.
Now it's getting a bit like Matrix, yeah, true.
Exactly. But I also, okay. I have one question more for you, Jacob. I want to talk about it a bit, alignment and governance of scale automations, because that's usually the key to their success, right? And that's also what you build Camunda on. But how does this rhyme with more AI-powered citizen developers? Because that's also what everyone's talking about, right? How are you enabling vibe coding in Camunda? Does that even work? And you talked about big banks and governance and all that. We've spoken about compliance, and we can't just do whatever, right? But everyone's also talking about now everyone can code now. It's also always like the Disney cartoon Ratatouille. Everyone can cook. Everyone can, even a rat can AI code now, right?
Yeah, although to pick this one up, I like that actually. I love the movie. I love the film, and I would say. Supposedly it's just a rat, like even a rat, but it is an incredibly talented rat. So I would say, the message of the movie is that, it doesn't matter if you're human or rat, but it doesn't matter if you have passion and talent and skill that you develop based on it in order to be like a good chef.
Very, very, very Disney-like. Okay, please don't do that. Now it's even more marketing here. Even more marketing crap here. Oh, crap! Why did I do that? No, but my point is still, how are you enabling that when you're a tool, you're your platform for security, safety, compliance, orchestration, governance, all that. That's in my opinion, that's Camunda in a nutshell, right? That's also what in the first place made RPA a thing, right? Because you could always automate IT with IT, but RPA suddenly became that thing that sort of gathered all of those techniques into one to say, and now you have an audit trail on it, and you can actually view how many times we executed it. That the magic of RPA was not moving your mouse. The magic was governance, right? To an extent, and then of course
to an extent.
I'm going to say all the flaws we realized afterwards, but you have to start somewhere, right? Okay, fair. That's a fair point. So Camunda in the same way is built on that as the upgrade to that, right? The Optimus Prime to the something like that, right? And
not gonna jump on that.
where the RPA was the KitchenAid machine, right? And then you're the Optimus Prime, but it's getting way out of hand now. But how are you and then handling these citizen developers, these AI powered, these things that come in that are not supposed to be governed that way?
Yeah, fair. So a few things here. So first of all, yes, of course, like this whole thing, everybody can code, everybody can create software, so to speak. It's of course it's in itself not a new idea. It's incredibly intriguing for obvious reasons. This is why low code became such a thing, right? 10 years or 15 years ago, and justifiably so to some degree, but then also had its limitations, and they were usually around what you just described. So the challenge of creating more complex solutions, more critical solutions that would need to be battle hardened, tested, for example, and governed. This is where usually then low code fell short. And to this day, we're not seeing, again, bank account opening solutions created in a low code fashion by citizen developers. It just doesn't happen. So in that sense, I'm thinking that to some degree there is a similarity here. However, also it is a little different. What we're also seeing is that AI, and now I'm going to come back to the vibe coding element, but I think it's where we're converging. We're seeing AI being applied by professional software engineers, also here at Camunda, for example, effectively to drive productivity. So in that sense, there is already things happening. And now to answer your question regarding our own product, analogy here would be, for example, the Copilot that we have in Camunda, where you can enter a prompt like, for example, I would like a bank account opening process, and then it generates a BPMN. That is a starting point, in fairness, right? You still need to manually work on that, but it is an accelerator too, like it's a productivity gain. And this is where we're also R&Ding, so where we are investing in, to what degree can we drive this acceleration? How can we create more shortcuts? How can we provide more runnable solutions out of the box in Camunda? So in that sense, it still boils down to what you said earlier. You need to, whatever you create, you need to make sure it runs as intended before you put it into production. Doesn't matter if it's deterministic or an dynamic pure play agent, so to speak. And this is where then I would say to some degree good old techniques like test automation, regression testing, etc. kick in, which can apply here just as well. So, which we have in our product anyway. So in that sense, it is pairing the vibe coding, aka AI powered application development, with enterprise application development, guardrails, mechanisms.
You're giving me the perfect and diplomatic answer to say that the vibe coding is good if you're a good coder, and then you can do well. And we use our coders that are good are using vibe coding. But a lot of people are also saying that, and this is not just me just coming up with this here. It's not just on LinkedIn. It's also big companies like Deloitte saying we don't need junior developers anymore. We don't need, and some other people saying, but we can actually just live with just juniors because they can just use AI. So what should take? Do we need more expertise in the future, and how are we going to get to that? Or do we need less expertise in the future? What whatever you're doing here to make it easier for citizen developers, it still requires them to be skilled, right, and understand what's going on and be very strict domain experts. Actually, also BPMN experts, right? Oh, they also need to know a little bit about code, don't they? What's your take here, Jacob?
Yeah. So I think that when it comes to simple, non-critical solutions, then I would buy into the idea of how you don't need to be an expert in your field in order to create that, and we're seeing that already. That's like the what is often called prosumers, like professional consumers, like people that just cobble something together for themselves, and that is good enough. Like back in the days, Microsoft Excel macros.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that earlier. Are you going to put an Excel macro to do this?
Exactly. So, and of course, there would buy into, I don't need a developer on that skill level to do it, which is good. And now next to that, I think we need to look at again, enterprise-grade solutions that have to tick the boxes of being reliable, etc. And that's and have a certain degree of complexity. And that's why I do not think that. That's why I believe you need highly skilled people. Let's just call them people, humans, that are supported by AI.
Let's call them developers or BPMN analysts, right? Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Developers load the term, right? Do we mean like Java people? Do we mean like so in that sense? But I would say skilled humans that
But you chose to say people to actually to still stay on the citizen developer side, right? You did that. I know you did that on purpose. But also the other thing, right? Less expertise and more expertise. Can juniors do this? Are you hiring juniors in Camunda? Do you still need them, or do you just need senior people? Because anything a junior can do can be done by an AI.
No. So we hire on all levels of seniority and experience, and sometimes, of course, we have certain requirements that then require also experience, let it be on the technical side or on the business side. But we totally also hire people that don't come with job experience. And to me, it all boils down to what I call talent and passion, basically. And so I would say a bit like that. Exactly. Yeah, true. We're hiring. We're not hiring rats. Well, talented, passionate. Doesn't matter how you look like, as long as it's talented and passionate. Come on, you can turn this into like something really good.
That's a quote. That's a quote from this podcast episode. We hire rats.
Talented, passionate rats. I would prefer a talented, passionate rat over a totally untalented and not lazy, but whatever, dull human anytime.
Yeah, I love this. It's brilliant stuff. Yeah. No. So, but Jacob, I really loved this conversation. I think we've gone through everything I wanted to talk to you about. Obviously, I could go on. I think we could go on laughing as well, and maybe we should have a beer at some point and keep on laughing. So I really loved this conversation, and I only have one final question for you, if you're ready for that one. That is, the final piece I always ask. Are you ready for that one? And did you think of anything?
Yeah, I have something. It's probably going to be corny and cheesy. I hope you don't mind too much, but that's also my personality.
It's okay. If you just mention a rat in a Disney movie, I'm also going to be fine.
Yeah, it's basically in that direction.
So, okay, Jacob. So, Jacob, what is the only constant?
So, I would like to talk about this from a personal angle. So what keeps me going, if you will. I've been doing this now for 16 years, 17 years, and taking a company from zero to where we are today. Certainly takes a bit of a toll as well. However, it gives more energy than it takes, and that's what I was wondering about, like what is the constant there? And sure, there are elements around, it's an interesting space. Automation is fascinating, IT is fascinating. It's fascinating to build a company and see how it's all clicking together. So that is great. However, I would say in my personal case, let it be with our own people, but then also with our customers and partners. I'm always incredibly energized by working with people that I consider both driven and kind. And looking at the world, I often take a lot of inspiration and hope from that. So, because sometimes, when you're in this highly competitive space and you're talking to people that say, hey, you have to be really aggressive, you don't be bound too much by, being honest or like doing the right thing, you have to play dirty in order to win. Sometimes you're hearing these things, not necessarily explicitly, but let's say that like between the lines. And you constantly need to make up your mind and decide, okay, am I going to do the right thing or am I going to do whatever in order to win? So it's a balance that has to be found constantly. And what I really, really love about working with my colleagues at Camunda is that they do what it takes. They are really, really driven. They really want to make big things happen. They operate under uncertainty. They take huge risks, sometimes personally, at least on the financial side or work-life balance side, etc., which in itself is a difficult topic. So they really lean in because they are driven and ambitious and want to win big. And now at the same time, there are people that I trust, that I appreciate, that are good humans. And so being able to win and being a good human at the same time is to me something very inspirational that then also gives me hope looking at the world today.
Jacob, I think that's a wonderful answer, and I think it's wonderful the way you also contextualize it, and the things you said about how we are all challenged to be, maybe forget it sometimes and do some dirty tricks and all that, but being driven and being kind. And I think in many ways, my podcast is called The Only Constant. There's obviously tons of constants people have said to me, right, all the time, because there's not one. It's all driven by curiosity, right? And I also hope that, and I felt that in this conversation as well, that we had a very kind, good-humored, good-spirited conversation. So I feel that constant you gave me applies very well to what I'm trying to do here as well. And I've been super happy that you've joined me for this conversation. Thank you very much, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, Lasse. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.